What's up, guys? It's Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down some things that we feel wide receivers need to know to take their game to the next level. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope we can teach you a few new things, but also, fellas, if you're a wide receiver, we are going to be traveling out to 15 different states this offseason for a 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camp. So next up on our camp tour, we'll be coming out to San Francisco, California. That camp is unfortunately sold out, but then we'll be heading out to Orlando, Phoenix, Arizona, Charlotte, North Carolina, Dallas, Texas, the DMV, St. Louis, Honolulu, Boston, Cleveland, Austin, Seattle, Newark, Denver, and Los Angeles, California. So all these camps will probably sell out, fellas. So we'd love to have some of our YouTube community out there. So check out that very first link in the description below if you guys are interested and would like to work with myself and my staff of coaches. Let's get started with this video. So now, first things first here, to take your skills to the next level as a wide receiver, you got to understand how a DB thinks and what his responsibilities are on each coverage. So based on how close he is, if he's right up in your face in press, or how far off he is, an off man like in this situation, his leverage responsibility does not change. And I'm going to explain to you how. So let's watch this route from DeVonta Smith. He's running a post route. Now, when we have inside shade off man coverage, that DB is trying to protect one thing and one thing only, and that's the inside. Next up, we're going to be looking at an example with Davante Adams versus press man inside coverage, but we're going to talk about this DeVonta Smith clip first. So when we have this inside shade look, he is trying to prevent us from running a post, from running a dig. So the mistake that a lot of wide receivers think that they need to do off the line, ball snap, they think that they need to square up the DB and attack his inside shoulder, inside hip, or his midline, like stem him, as some people like to say. Now, the reason why you don't want to stem him is because what's the whole purpose of inside leverage? To protect the inside, right? He doesn't want you to go to the inside. So if you stem him and you attack his leverage, quote unquote, he is going to do something that I call keeping his leverage, right? So you attack his leverage, he's going to do something called a weave. He will weave to the inside, angle his back pedal to be able to stay on that inside leverage. He is giving you the outside right now. So as a wide receiver, I need to understand that. That is how you structure your routes. It's all based off of how the DB plays you, what leverage he's in, and what coverage he's in. So you see DeVonta Smith, he doesn't just square him up. He goes right at the outside shoulder and the outside hip of the DB, because we know that we are not going to be able to get the inside release, if you will. We're not going to be able to stem him and break in front of him, because if he keeps his leverage to the inside and I keep stemming to the inside, I am screwing up the spacing of the play. And I'm going to break off on this post and run right into him, number two. So I'm not going to get any separation. I'm going to lose spacing and I'm not going to get open. So how we can maintain spacing and how we can get open is by selling the 9, selling fade, and attacking the right shoulder and the right hip, or his outside shoulder and his outside hip. So you see how Smith, when he does this, it is the same consistent pad level throughout. He's not running as fast as he can right here, but he is maintaining the same stride and the same body language. Those are the two most important things, because when there's a change in your stride or a change in body language, that's how this DB will lock this thing up. So when he goes at that outside shoulder, we see how we get this DB to flip his hips. He puts a move on and then gets to slip under and forces that speed turn from the DB. Now we have spacing for the QB to lead me, and I'm open. Now, again, like I was talking about, change in speed, change in pad level. A DB, when he's in off-man coverage, we're going to talk about this in a later video, he's watching your hips. He's not supposed to be looking at your feet, not supposed to be looking at your eyes. A lot of people talk about, oh, you want to keep your eyes straight forward. You do. But at the end of the day, the most important thing to commit is your pad level. Your hips and your shoulders have to be going right at his outside shoulder the entire time. If there's a raise up of your chest because you were slowing down, if there is a change in your stride length, all of those things let that DB know that a break is coming, and he will not open his hips. People are hesitant with this type of move because they're afraid that that DB is going to just sit right to the inside. If we do what we need to do, we will get him to flip his hips. So let's play this again full speed one more time. Great job by Smith attacking the outside shoulder, maintaining the same speed, the same stride, and the same pad level to flip. So like I said, fellas, we have to know how a DB thinks. So we got inside shade press coverage now. Both, like that last example, off man and press man, both the form of man coverage, both the form of inside leverage. So what's the difference between the two? Only thing is that this DB's closer. His responsibility is still the exact same. Force the wide receiver to the outside and protect the inside. So to take your receiver skills to that next level, fellas, like I said, you have to know that. I would say playing receiver is probably 40% mental, 60% physical, I'd say. But 60% is a horrible grade. If you don't have the mental side of things and you're just out there running routes, like, you're not going to get, against a talented DB, you're going to get locked up every single play. And then you got the reverse side of things. You have guys who know exactly what to do, but physically they maybe just don't have the technique, they don't have the explosion, maybe they don't have the quickness to be able to execute. You need a good combination of both. But a lot of guys don't have the mental side of things, and that's what separates the great from just the average. So let's watch what Adams does here. So he's running a dig route versus inside shade press. Now, he takes an outside release. A lot of wide receiver coaches that maybe don't necessarily understand this would say that this is bad. You never want to take an outside release on an inside breaking route. That is completely wrong. You can take an outside release, inside release on any given route, unless it's a mandatory outside release fade or a must outside release fade. So Adams comes off the ball here. He attacks this DB's leverage to the inside because all we need him to do is take that step right there. Hold his leverage, give me the free release to the outside. Now, a lot of wide receivers, when they see inside shade press and they hear me say this, oh, you could take an outside release on it, they'll just take off and run. But when you just take off and run, DB will get hands right into your hip and squeeze you all the way to that sideline. So we got to keep him honest. We got to keep him honest with his leverage. So now, we take the outside release. Main reason we took the outside release is to keep spacing. If Adams tries to give this DB a move outside, takes the inside release, DB's going to do whatever possible to protect the inside leverage. We already talked about that with the off-man coverage. It's just a closer version of it. He will not let us get a free inside release. He will reroute, and try to force us as far as he can to the inside if we even get him to open up his hips. Because against a disciplined guy, he's going to stay square the entire time. So we're better off taking the outside release. Let's take my chances at the top of the break where I can get open rather than trying to force it because the inside release is comfortable. Listen, if this DB's in head-up press, outside shade press, I love an inside release on a dig because that's easy. You could just lean into him. You could just run the route. It's very easy. Taking an outside release on a dig is uncomfortable, or a post like in the last example, but we have to be able to do it. Like I said, this video is about taking your receiver skills to the next level, not staying where you were at. So now, when we take that outside release, we need to make sure that we have a plan. So Adams works him off the line. We got to have a plan at the top of the break. My plan should be either, like always against press coverage, your plan should be to what? Restack the guy. I want to get this DB trailing my back hip so I can give him a move at the top of the break to lose him. And that's exactly what Adams does. He gives him this move to the outside. See how he sells with his hips, sells with his shoulders. That's where the DB is watching. That's what gets him to shoot to the outside. And then we ultimately make him stumble. While now I have spacing, there's a window here for my quarterback to throw me open. I didn't force the inside release and get rerouted into other defenders and other wide receivers. Now, some people are hesitant when they take this outside release on a dig because what if they can't restack? Instead of this DB trailing, what do we do if this DB is like right here? What should I do? You take your right hand and you put it on the back of his shoulder, back of his hip, and you throw by and slip under. You have to have a plan at the top of the break, but you also at the same time have to be able to react at the top of the break when you do this type of thing. So fellas, we got to understand, take your route running to the next level. We got to have it up here. We got to have the right football IQ. You have to understand why a DB is playing you a certain way. Study DB film, fellas. That's a great way to get better. Study the different breakdowns that they have on YouTube, from NFL talking about, like where they interview DBs, they walk them through, ask them to walk them through what they're thinking. Try to figure out how a DB thinks. Because when you know what they're thinking and why they're doing a certain thing, that makes our job a whole hell of a lot easier. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by Adams taking that outside release, hitting that move, and then getting separation on that DB. Okay, so now, next example I want to discuss here is a great move that you can use to help your routes get to that next level. And it's going to be called a box cut. So some of you may have heard of a box cut before. I've heard some receiver coaches call this a square cut. That's not necessarily wrong, as long as you just know what to do and when to do it. So we have outside leverage, off man, and this wide receiver is going to be running a dig. Same thing that we just discussed with Adams, same route. But he's going to be using this box cut to threaten the leverage of the DB. So let's play at full speed. He comes off the ball, squares him up, gives him a move outside, and is able to create separation. So like we said, DB's outside leverage. Remember, it all starts. Like when it comes to, because, we could go over all the different moves. I have a lot of videos out there talking about top of the route moves, drills to work on top of the route moves, press releases, drills for your press releases. But when do I actually apply those? And how you figure that out, it all starts with knowing why is a DB playing a certain way and what's his leverage. So his leverage is outside shade, he's off man. Why is he playing that way? Probably because the wide receiver has cut his split down and he's closer to the hash. So he's expecting him to do some kind of outside breaking route. He's expecting a 10-yard out, a corner, anything like that. In a real game scenario, when he's outside shade 2, he probably has safety help to the inside. So that's how we always want to treat our routes. So we see that coming up pre-snap. A lot of that's already a given. You guys should already have that engraved into your brain that it is a given. He's got safety help trying to take away the outside. I diagnose he's outside shade off man. I got to run a dig. I know that I want to attack his leverage, try to square him up. This is when I would want to square him up because that's going to make him do what? Keep his leverage, right? And I want to give a move that threatens like I'm going to the outside if I have to run an inside breaking route. Now, some of you might be asking why. Why do you want to just square him up when he's outside shade? You're running a route that's going away from his leverage. Why wouldn't you just run the leverage? Remember what he has inside. He has safety help to the inside. So if you just take off and go run, why is he outside shade? That's exactly what he wants you to do. So we have to make sure that we threaten his leverage. We have to do it efficiently, but we got to know why. So now, when we go up into this thing, it's called a box cut, right? Because essentially your feet are moving in like the pattern of a box. Now, he decides to snap with his outside foot on this. Personally, I like a box cut with the inside foot so we could get out in 4 steps. And I'm going to explain that in a second. But what we are trying to sell here is obviously an out route. We were trying to sell like we were snapping down. So you put the brakes on. The first part of the move is snap down and then cross over. Snap down, cross over. And there's a tempo to it, right? So you see how he snaps down, crosses over, throws to the outside. Now I feel like his chest kind of popped up a tad. I would like him to stay maybe a little bit lower so he could sell and have more of an explosive step to the outside. But like I said, fellas, all we need the DB to do is just hesitate. Because if we get him to hesitate, hold his leverage, and I have spacing on that dig, there's a window there, I'm not running directly into safety, that is all I need. That's all I need to be successful on a route like this. Now, how I would teach it though, like if you're a guy trying to learn this move, I would teach it to where you snap with the inside foot. Here's why, because you see how he snaps with the outside foot, he takes a total of 5 steps. He goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you snap with the inside foot, like instead of that foot, you snap with the right foot, that's your trigger step, you would go right, left foot would hit, and then you would go right, then left again. So you would throw that crossover right into it off of 4 steps. But because you go outside foot, he takes about 5 steps, which can take some time at the break point if we are using this. So that's the mechanics of it. We change levels, drop my hips, decelerate, then I throw a crossover. Make sure we are trying to snap the best we can on that inside foot. Let's play it again full speed. So remember, fellas, this is a great move to help your route running get to that next level, to sell the outside, to sell the inside in some cases. But also, it starts with knowing why the DB is playing a certain way. That's how you can pick your move. Okay, so now, next thing I want to go over is the hand technique that wide receivers need off the line and how it is way simpler than people make it seem. Wide receiver coaches love to complicate the hand combat press release technique stuff. They love to overcomplicate it. They talk about way too many moves. You got the swat rip, swat chop, you got the shoulder reduce, all of these things. Now, again, none of those are wrong. You can use all of those, but sometimes wide receivers will get up there and they don't even know when to use what move. They come up to the line and they're like, man, do I do the swat dip? Do I just dip my shoulder? Like, do I step back? How do I beat this guy? And you have to keep it simple based on what you are doing with your feet. Your feet will set up the hands. That's what you need to understand. So let's play this full speed. Let's watch what this wide receiver does. He does a wide step release, takes the inside release, and does like kind of a fake throw by move. Now, do I think he caught this thing maybe a little bit too far over the middle? Yes, probably. But what I want to talk about is off the line. So we have head up press coverage, right? So I got head up press. He's not giving me a specific leverage, right? He's not giving me inside shade. He's not giving me outside shade. He's just directly in front of me. So when I have that, and let's say I'm running a dig, ideally, what release do you probably want to take? We talked about this. Inside release, right? It's easier. You can lean into him at the break point. You don't have anybody right in front of you to have to throw by. You don't absolutely have to restack him. Yes, you would try to, but you don't have to. So we want to take an inside release. So up to the line, I know, okay, head up press, I want to take an inside release. I should have that plan in my head. Like, if he's inside shade, I'm going to do this. If he's outside shade, I'm going to do this. If he's head up, I'm going to do this. So if he's head up, what this wide receiver wants to do is he's setting him up with a wide step release where you jab with the back foot, try to get this DB to jump, and we take the inside release. So when it comes to your hand technique, because that's the whole purpose, like I said, the feet set up the hands. To get off of press, you just need to beat his inside arm. if we were taking an inside release. It's all based on the type of release and what you're doing with your feet. Because if I come up to line, I'm trying to take an inside release, do I need to worry about his right hand? No, I don't need to worry about his right hand, because even if he gets his right hand on, let's say I take the inside release and his right hand ends up on my left shoulder, left hip in this specific case, so what? I'm off the press. I could fight those hands throughout the stem of the route. The whole reason a DB is going to jam you is to disrupt timing with the quarterback. So if we could just set him up with the feet, get the initial hand strike off, and get up into the route, I kept timing, and I'm probably going to keep spacing, and I'm more likely to get separation. It's not about, okay, I'm going to sit there, because a lot of guys will do this. They're so worried about the hand technique that their feet will stop, and they'll just worry about fighting hands, and they're not going anywhere. DB did his job. Let's have a plan. Make sure we're attacking a specific hand. Understand which hand you have to beat. So we attack him outside, hit him with the wide step, and you see this wide receiver just swats. He swats the back of the arm, back of the shoulder is another spot, back of the elbow. Those are 3 points of control. So when we get his hands off, you see, he's able to recover this DB, able to get hands, but I'm off the press. I'm off the jam. Whole reason with the jam is what? To disrupt timing. So fellas, when it comes down to hand-to-hand combat, make sure that we keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate things. Let's play this full speed one more time. Great job by this wide receiver taking that inside release, faking that throw by, and then getting separation. All right, fellas, so now, next example we're going to discuss here, one thing that's going to help you take your routes to the next level is you got to understand where a DB's eyes are. So I think everybody should fairly know what I mean by that, but where's DB looking at when he's in man coverage? Your hips, right? He's looking at this wide receiver's hips. He is not watching and we talked about this briefly in the beginning. He is not watching the eyes, not watching the feet. He is watching the hips, reading the body language, because apparently the hips won't lie to him. Now, I think the hips can lie to him. I think the hips can sell a lot of routes, and this is going to be a perfect example. So this wide receiver is running a sluggo. Now, on a sluggo, it's a slant and go. Everybody loves to talk about, wide receivers, you need to snap your eyes to the quarterback. Now, that is true. I'm not saying that's not true, but you also have to make sure that your hips and your shoulders commit, not just the eyes. So let's play this full speed, because that is what will get the DB to bite. When you commit your hips and shoulders, that is what will get him to drive on a double move. That is what will get him to flip his hips and open up to a fade, whatever. So you see when this wide receiver breaks, he's taking 3 steps on a slant. This is Andy Isabella, by the way, as well, wide receiver for the Cardinals. So he takes first step here, right? What happens? Eyes go around, but the eyes bring the hips and bring the shoulders, and DB is looking at the hips and not so much at the shoulders, but reading the hips. So when we break off of this, hips and shoulders commit. Now, you do not want to turn out of it too early, because that's called what I call cheating the route. So before the third step on the sluggo, what a lot of guys will do is before that foot gets down on their cut, their hip and their shoulder will start to leave the break. This wide receiver does it a little bit right here. So before they hit that third step, they start to turn hips and shoulders. That gives away the route, fellas. But if you can stay committed hips and shoulders, let the cut slow you down, and then we get upfield, that is what gets this DB to crash and gets him to crash hard. Now, same scenario, like we talked about that very first thing, that post example, where you're going right at his outside shoulder, DB flips his hips. We have to stay committed with my hips and shoulders until the break point. Let's say this DB's pressed. I got to run a slant. I'm doing a diamond release where I take 3 steps outside, trying to get him to open up. My hips and my shoulders got to be committed until I hit that third step. We cannot round it. We cannot raise up. Your hips sell the route. Yes, on a double move, your eyes are important, but I would say your hips and your shoulders are even more important. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, we are coming out to 15 different states this offseason for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver camps. So check out that very first link in the description below if you guys are interested and would like to get some work in with us. I'll see you guys next time.